Now, for more on the latest developments from the African Union Summit that ended yesterday, I am joined by my colleague Peter Heinlein, VOA Correspondent, to give us a sense of what transpired at the summit. Good evening, Peter.
Well, good evening, Shaka. Thank you for inviting me on tonight.
Well, it's a pleasure, of course, always to get an opportunity to interact with you. In very, very few words, how would you summarize the summit that ended yesterday? Was it a success, a major success? Was it a failure, or all of the above?
I think it could be all of the above. In the short term, it was a failure. The intended subject of the event, inter-African trade, was completely swept aside by an election that ended in disaster, with neither candidate winning. But in the long run, if you look at it from the macro perspective, it woke up people to the need for greater, stronger leadership within the organization. In the next election 6 months from now, there may be much stronger candidates and an outcome that will set the AU on a path to greater things in the future. It's been struggling over the past few years, and this was a wake-up call to many people.
Now, Peter, the fact that the incumbent chairman of the African Commission, that is Jean Ping from Gabon, the fact that he was not able to win the second term, does that mean that the organization or the continent has no confidence in his ability to do the job?
That's an interesting question, because it did constitute a no-confidence vote. When he was the only candidate on the ballot in the fourth round of voting, 21 countries did not vote for him, 21 out of 53 voting. So he was not able to get the two-thirds majority necessary to stay on. And that kind of vote of no confidence is shattering to him. Now, it is said that he does plan to try to run again. It's unclear whether a commission that was named to make rules for the next election will allow him and or the challenger, Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma of South Africa, to run. It's understood that she's not that interested in running, but that he is interested, and so it'll be interesting to see whether he's allowed to run. But it was a slap in the face to him, along the lines that we see the fault lines within the organization. Some of the smaller countries and some of the Francophone countries were on one side. South Africa and some of the Anglophone countries were on the other side. And it seems as if there was bad blood, and the countries that wanted to see a change were adamant and would not vote for Ping.
Have you been able to learn or to find out as to why South Africa, of all countries, made sure that Ping doesn't get a second term? Because there are some people, in fact, who seems to say that this may very well be personal.
Yes, South Africa was among the countries that felt that Jean Ping possibly was not as strong a leader as was necessary during big crises in North Africa over the past year, as the Arab Spring swept across the northern tier of the continent in Tunisia and in Libya, or in the Ivory Coast and in Libya in particular. The AU was sort of left behind as other members of the international community, other actors, the European Union, the UN, the United States, took the lead role and basically dictated the course of events, while the African Union, believing that it should be the lead actor in solving African problems, took its time and was left behind, and it looked bad in both those cases. And Jean Ping is taking the rap for that, in a manner of speaking.
But isn't that really sort of personalizing the whole situation, given that you and I know that the African Union happens to be an organization, frankly, that has teeth that don't bite?
Yes, it does beg the question. We have to ask, is the AU relevant now? And many members of the organization feel it hasn't been relevant, and maybe this is the time, and this could be the positive aspect of the outcome of this summit, is that there will be greater competition. There are already some very interesting names being bandied about as possible candidates in the fresh election that will be held at the next African Union in Malawi at the end of June.
How do you respond to some who say that South Africa itself was actually humiliated, given that its candidate did not make it after all? You know as well as I do that South Africa happens to be one of the 5 major countries which are not really supposed to be in the running for that sort of position. There is a sort of an unwritten rule or a rule of thumbs. I'm sure you know about that.
Yes, of course. There is an unwritten rule that none of the big 5, the financiers, the biggest and most powerful countries in Africa, will hold that position, that it'll be reserved for the smaller countries. But was South Africa humiliated? I don't think so. I think they feel they did what they set out to do, and that was make sure that Jean Ping doesn't get a second term. It's hard to imagine why they wanted to run, but there is a one school of thought that says nobody else would do it, so they stuck their name forward, knowing that they could at least block the Ping candidacy and possibly move on from there. In that, they succeeded. At the same time, they did take a lot of heat for jumping into this fray and breaking this unwritten rule. They irritated a lot of the smaller countries, especially the Francophone countries, that feel that Francophone countries need to hold their own. They're under a bit of pressure these days. The chair has almost always been a Francophone. And they were very concerned when South Africa stuck its name in the hat.